Good afternoon and welcome. This is West Michigan Issues and Impacts, a show dedicated to bringing personalities and issues of import to West Michigan viewers. And today I have with me my co-host Shannon Felgner, and also we're honored today to have Lieutenant Governor Brian Calley with us.
Great to be with you.
Great, thank you very much. I have to say that most of the time you don't even know who the Lieutenant Governor is. I mean, I've been in local government management for 31 years myself, and it's been amazing since you've been in office to actually know the Lieutenant Governor and to have you take the lead on some extremely difficult issues and really kind of take those on and make them your own and bring them to successful resolution. I was honored to be able to serve with your task force on personal property tax. I know you had a few of those going, and ultimately you took something that's been there for a long, long time and made it work differently in a way that should create more jobs in Michigan and more investment.
It really is an exciting time to be involved. There's been a lot of change, but we've also started to see our state make a remarkable turnaround. It wasn't too many years ago when we'd have been on the bottom of every list that you'd want to be at the top of, and at the top of every list you'd rather be at the bottom of. And but the personal property tax reform, I think, is a good example of one of those issues that had really plagued our state for a long time. Nobody really liked it. Those who administrated it didn't like it. Those who had to pay it didn't like it. And yet, what do you do instead? How do you get off the dependence on that and go to something that makes more sense? So I really did appreciate the way that that communities in West Michigan, particularly Ottawa and Kent counties, that came together to really provide a technical expertise that our administration needed in order to get that over the finish line. And after literally decades of stops and starts on that effort, it actually happened last year. So thank you very much.
Oh, well, thank you.
Well, let me ask you, Lieutenant Governor, tell us about a typical day for you in Lansing.
You know, there's not really any such thing as a typical day. I do preside over Senate most of the time. That is one of my constitutional responsibilities. So I don't get to vote unless it's a tie, and that's very, very rare. So I try to be there for a session, the formal session, but really it's whatever the administration needs. We have a team that is built around everybody doing their part, pitching in and making the big things happen. So for example, this coming up, we're coming into budget season, so it's all hands on deck for that. The governor and I and the budget director will all have a part in presenting the budget to the legislature and then moving that through the process. On another day, I might be involved in disability advocacy. It happens to be an area in public policy work that I really like to focus on. So every day brings a new set of interests and challenges, and I really consider it to be the best job around because I get to work on all kinds of interesting and exciting things, and really the governor has to take all the arrows. So it's a pretty good deal for me.
That sounds good.
So January 1st ushered in a new legislature, and due to term limits, some say good, some say bad, but you have a whole lot of new faces in Lansing. How would you kind of compare the atmosphere in 2015 compared to the one we just left at the end of 2014?
Well, we have new leadership in the legislature. That's a really big change. Of course, you have membership that changes every 2 years with term limits. You have some people that are leaving, some people that are coming. Speaker Bolger left office because of term limits, as did Senate Majority Leader Randy Richardville. Both were outstanding partners in the reinvention process. So coming in now, I'm so excited. We have Speaker Kevin Cotter, and then of course somebody real close to here, Arlen Meekhoff,
our own Arlen Meekhoff,
the
yes.
Senate Majority Leader. Arlen and I came into the legislature at the same time in 2007. And so we've been real close. He's an outstanding leader. I know that Meekhoff and Cotter are going to make outstanding leaders of their caucuses, and I'm looking forward to working with them on what comes next. I mean, we spent a lot of time fixing problems of the past, and now it's time to really intensely focus on building the best possible future.
Very good.
So speaking of the future and the leaders that you have to work with, what are your priorities for this term?
So we're looking forward to this transition away from fixing problems of the past and in trying to make government work better. And the governor, when he was talking about it in the State of the State, he described it as the river of opportunity. So what we've had over the past decades is this accumulation of program after program after program that are very prescriptive, and they deal with symptoms of problems. And what we're looking to do now through the redesign of the way state government works, so we have Health and Human Services now, which is the combination of both Department of Community Health and Department of Human Services before, into one unified operation. And then on the talent and economic development side, we put several agencies strategically aligned under Director Steve Arwood. And when you consider those two areas and the potential that they have in changing lives, how much better will we do if we design the services around what people need, instead of expecting people to conform to the artificial constructs of a government program. And that's really what we think could change everything in terms of the effectiveness of state government, not just to help people maintain, but to help people that are having a hard time get to a point of independence, a point of their best and most productive future. And hopefully that'll lead right into the education reform efforts that we have to connect our education process better to what the demands of the 21st century economy are. These are the types of opportunities that are in front of us, and they're in front of us because we have fiscal crisis behind us, and we're ready to embrace the future for all it could be.
I think you answered a follow-up question I had. I think a lot of the buzz has been, well, this might just be a reorganization of administration at the top, but ultimately you see this as treating a person as a whole person, mental health, physical health, and all human service needs.
I'll give you a few examples where we've already been trying this out on the ground over the course of the last few years. One was an idea that we borrowed from a school in Grand Rapids. It's what we call Pathways to Potential. So we take our DHS caseworkers, and instead of having them in these government buildings that kind of hidden away, and how do people know and how do they get to them, we actually place them in at-risk schools that have a high at-risk population. And now we're in well over 100 schools across, actually I think a couple hundred schools across the state, where we put those caseworkers in where they're close to the people that they're serving. They can see what the issues are and then conform what we do around them. What we're seeing is that the absenteeism in those schools is declining very, very substantially. Oh. And several other aspects that we think are important measures to those students' success. And then with the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, we started Community Ventures. And this is a solution that really deals with the person in trying to understand if you have a chronically unemployed person who's been unemployed for a very long time or maybe never have had a job, to get to the bottom of what is the barrier to their employment, and then how can we bring to the table the state government's ability to break down some of those barriers with the end goal of helping them to reach independence. And what we're finding is that we are once you solve those problems, it might be a mental health issue, it might be a transportation issue, could be somebody that's running from a bad relationship, could be homelessness, could be all kinds of different problems. But if we say, all right, what's the problem and how can we help fix that problem, then what we're finding is that that population that was chronically unemployed before can be independent and employable. And our success rate has been really high. In fact, the employers that are participating in this are telling us that the longevity, the turnover rate that they have with this population and Community Ventures is better than the general population that they normally pull from. So we know this works, but we're ready now to scale this up across all of state government.
Wow. And that'll mean major savings for employers, the more they can cut that turnover rate as well.
It works out great for employers because they get a workforce that is more efficient and that there is less turnover. But it also works great for them as taxpayers, because now when it comes to their unemployment insurance costs or the taxes that it takes to run the different programs of the past, once we help people to be more independent, then everybody wins.
That's great.
Shifting gears a little bit to something that's on a lot of Michigan citizens' minds. We've learned that you're leading a transportation initiative for fixing Michigan roads. Can you explain to us and the viewers how that works?
Sure. So coming up in May, on May 5th, the voters of the state will have a say on whether or not we put a permanent ongoing solution to our terrible roads into place.
Finally.
This is a great opportunity. In fact, this is really our shot. As long as I've been involved in state level politics, I have never seen a realistic, permanent solution to fixing our roads and bridges like this one. This is our shot, and we need to take it. Here's the basic tenets of the plan. It's pretty simple. Right now, how we do roads is very complicated. We're trying to unwind the complicated mess of the past and instead do something very simple. And here, how's this? Everything you pay at the pump goes to roads and bridges and transportation.
It seems simple.
Yes.
It seems like it maybe should have always been that way.
Exactly. And you know, the system that was cobbled together before, you pay at the pump, some goes to local government, some goes to schools, some goes to transportation. It's a, you know, it was a complicated mix, but less than half of the money paid at the pump used to go to, or currently goes to, our roads and bridges. So what we want to do is say, first of all, everything charged at the pump goes to fix our roads and bridges and give us the best transportation system that we can get. And then on the back end, because we do that, it creates a hole in the school aid fund and for local government revenue sharing. That's why we need to take the sales tax from 6% to 7%. What that does is it takes care of local governments and schools.
So it shores up the gap that's created when everything that is charged at the pump goes into transportation.
Exactly. So what you're left with is taxes at the pump fix our roads and bridges, and sales taxes go to local schools and government. And it's a very straightforward proposal. It's one that that accomplishes a lot of the goals that we had when we set out. We want a permanent, ongoing solution to the roads that we all know are terrible and that are costing us lives, by the way. And this is one of the things that's one of the untold stories of this is 1/3 of all traffic accidents are due in part to to road conditions. And when you consider that many accidents that are occurring and how many people get hurt, not to mention the lost productivity and the property damage and all the other things that go along with it. And here's the other thing, our neighbors to the south in Indiana, their road-related car repairs are $132 less per year than we experience here in Michigan. It's like a hidden tax that we experience today, but with a whole bunch of headache and grief and danger on top of it. So the way we look at it is, why don't we just, instead of putting all those resources into unproductive uses like road-related car repairs and medical bills and all the things that come along with accidents, let's just put it into making our road system better in the first place.
The personal property tax ballot initiative has been called the most successful in Michigan history. And it seems like if the story were told as you just said it, that this could also be a very successful initiative. In fact, both have started out with a little bit of questionable input from the polls. But I think that transportation has been so complicated that initially I would expect that to see that from voters.
I think it's a good comparison to look back at the personal property tax ballot initiative last year. That was an issue where we had a very cumbersome, old, antiquated system, and when you want to change it, you know, even the starting point is a tough thing to kind of understand. Like, how do we ever get there in the first place? And I'd say in transportation, we face some of the same challenges. Where we want to bring it to is simple, but where we're coming from is cumbersome and complicated. And so I think that's really the story that needs to be told as we go through this election process, is to make sure that people understand that when you go to the gas station, you fill up your car, you expect the taxes you pay at the pump are going to go to fix your roads and bridges. That's what Proposal 1 does.
Sounds like a theme of your administration, simple and streamlined.
That really is the, if there's one thing that I hope will be a hallmark of this administration, it's really, I would say more effectiveness than streamlined, but the idea of just doing things that make sense. And then at the end of the day, you're going to get the efficiencies and the effectiveness that you want out of just the common sense solutions.
You expect, definitely. Another item that's on the minds of a lot of our viewers, body cameras. What's the state's position on law enforcement body cameras? Well,
we have some legislation that's been introduced on the subject to require body cameras. The administration has not taken a position on that, other than to say it's a good discussion to have. We're looking forward to having a dialogue on it. I wouldn't know in terms of how such a thing would be implemented at this point. We haven't even made a determination whether or not it's the type of policy it makes sense to pursue. But we do know, with all the discussion that has happened with policing and police force, it's the sort of thing it does warrant or merit discussion. So we're looking forward to having people at the table to talk more about it.
Great.
Which kind of leads into the next one, unfunded mandates. You know, I've been around the business a long time and suffered with unfunded mandates the Citizens Research Council issued a report about 4 or 5 years ago that indicated that all 3 branches of state government have, in my words, willfully and frequently violated the Headley Amendment to the Constitution from 1978. And I guess, you know, the Michigan Association of Counties had a proposal that would have kind of drawn a line and said, we're not going to worry about the past, but in the future, let's work on not passing on unfunded mandates. And the administration, you and the governor, have so many times focused on doing the right thing. And certainly the rule of law is the right thing. I'm curious what your take is on that, whether you think something like this will get traction, whether the governor might support legislation that would look to the future and say no more unfunded mandates.
One of the things that the governor put on the table again in the State of the State address is the idea of attaching fiscal notes to every bill. And so it might be, sometimes people look at it like that's something you do for tax bills. Of course, we do put fiscal notes on tax bills, but we think you should put fiscal notes on all bills in terms of who's going to implement it and what is the cost of that implementation, and then how is that cost going to be covered. So, and also we're asking for time frames to be attached to it as well. You know, a lot of times the bill is passed, it has immediate effect, but really there's an implementation process, sometimes software development, certainly employee training and infrastructure that has to be put in place in order to implement these bills. So we do think there's a lot of room for improvement in that area, and I believe that fiscal notes will really, on all of the bills, will get to the bottom of, into the heart of the matter. It forces the discussion. Okay, now we've identified that an expense comes with this. How do we want to see to the coverage of that expense? Because we're actually interested in it across the board, not just for local government, but sometimes bills are passed and part of state government needs to handle implementation. And we need to make sure that as those decisions are made that we think ahead about what is it going to cost and how is it going to get covered.
Yeah, that would be a practical addition that would be welcome all across the state. It would be amazing to have fiscal notes. I remember being asked one time when I testified before a Senate subcommittee whether Ottawa County always knows what things are going to cost before we do them. And I say, we absolutely do our best to know what it's going to cost. And it seemed like a foreign concept to the legislator that asked the question. I think that would be a huge accomplishment for everyone if we could get that done.
We do have very talented people that are good at estimating things. I mean, it's still an estimation. You can't narrow it down exactly many times, but you can get pretty close when you have the right folks with the right experience and background. So I'm confident that it's not a technical problem. It's the sort of thing where we can do it and we just need to get it done.
That'd be great.
That'd be a nice addition. So locally in Ottawa County especially, we are focusing on cultural intelligence is one of our initiatives for our organization. Is there anything in the state organization that focuses on improving cultural intelligence?
What we've just launched into as of last October is an executive directive to better equip the state of Michigan to be the type of employer that is safe and attractive to people with disabilities. And one of the things, and sometimes we think about disability accessibility as being something like make sure your doors are wide enough, or that you have ramps to get into buildings and that sort of thing. And that, of course, that's very important. But if you don't have a cultural competency within your government with the other employees, then what happens is somebody will come in, and if they have some sort of a difference, a disability, then people don't know exactly, if they don't have an experience, they don't really know how to act in those situations, and it's tragic because it leads to isolation. And so you have some that might not know how to engage, and others who don't want to say something wrong or say something out of place, and so they just avoid. Those are the sorts of things where this executive directive, on the one side, we're looking to go out and recruit and make sure that we're the type of place that takes advantage of this very talented but largely untapped population. But then also help our current employees to understand how to make their work environment safe and inclusive. And I think about even just asking questions. Now, I'm the father of a daughter with autism, and I love when people ask questions about autism. If they don't really know, if they don't understand something, or if they have heard something, or they would just like to know about a particular behavior, I would much rather have them just ask me. But the thing is, people are nervous. They don't want to offend if they ask. And so it's just a really simple thing that you can let people know it's okay to ask. Are you just curious about something? Is there something you don't understand? Just ask the question. Clear the air and you'll find that relationships are formed and you create kind of a safe environment for everybody to work.
Medicaid expansion initially, I think, held some promise, at least for county CMH agencies, of expanded funding, more people with access to CMH services, which everybody agrees, I think, is desperately needed. I know in Ottawa County and some others, probably because of how it was implemented, it left a gap in the budget. Do you know of any plans to address that in the future, or?
We are undergoing major change in this area, and it's going to take a lot of flexibility from all the players, from the state right on through to service providers, to local CMHs, in order to make it work and adjust to what the new reality is. There is more resources in the system across the board, across the whole state, than there was before Healthy Michigan. The enrollment has been higher than expected, the demand for it, not for any other reason other than it's actually a really good product that people demand. And so that's different than how CMHs were funded before. Before, there was a lot of general fund appropriation that didn't really come with any requirements or service guidelines. And so a local community could say, you know, here's what we think is needed, and the Medicaid rules are different than that. And so it's required some amount of change. The more that we learn about the population on Healthy Michigan, the more effective we'll be in making the determination on what additional resources that CMHs need to fill those gaps, because every community is different. And so what I would say to those who are involved in local CMHs, that you know, the work that we had done last year in terms of some supplemental support, front-end loading some additional support as well to help through the enrollment process of Healthy Michigan, hopefully that demonstrates that there is a willingness or an interest in working through this together and doing what we can to make it turn out as well as it possibly can. But there really isn't any way to get around the fact that it's a change. And right. Change is going to take some flexibility and some modification in the way that we do things and how we serve people.
But it should end up targeting resources where they're needed the most.
That's what we hope, is that it really, as we go through this entire process, that we want a system that is more effective. And we know, it's not for lack of trying, but we know that right now, in terms of particularly people with developmental disabilities, that there's still, you know, people live mostly secluded lives, and kind of away from the mainstream, away from society. And so as we take this next step, you know, we've gone through, thankfully, we've gone away from the institutionalization process where we used to just lock people away, and we've gone now to community-based services. But we have to do a better job at making our communities work for people that have neurological differences, and that's not easy work. It really, I mean, it's hard work, but it's worth it. It's a diversity that just brings just this beautiful aspect to you know, human life and existence. If we could just somehow figure out how to make our communities work better for people that have differently working neurological systems, and it could be a brain disorder, mental health issue, developmental disability. That these are all the sorts of things that they're tough issues to handle, but I can tell you firsthand that this is a group of people that has so much to offer, and really has been largely shut out of opportunity.
Tell us about the Regional Prosperity Initiative. How did the state's 20 current departments fall for realigning their services into the 10 regions? So
the initiative to create the prosperity regions was really, it came out of just some early experience in our administration when we were looking at every program had different boundaries, and nothing was aligned, nothing worked together, nothing was strategically implemented with other things. And so when we were trying to put this map together, and we put, you know, here's one layer of programs, here's another layer of programs. Pretty soon we had over 100 different jurisdictional territories.
The spaghetti map, as I recall.
It was like it looked like you dropped some spaghetti on a state map. And so what we wanted to do was to say, you know what, let's focus our efforts around regions that have strategic interest together. And it's always hard in some of those border areas. It's always hard to figure out exactly how how to develop those types of regions. But what we've wanted all of our state departments to do is to start the process of conforming to those regions. Now, that will be, I think that will be easier as we consolidate our departments into strategically aligned areas of health and human services and talent and economic development. So as that alignment happens, there'll be a better opportunity to conform everything the state does into those regions. And one thing I want to make sure that you understand is that each of these regions, or most of these regions, have like a center of gravity, where you'd look at it and say, yeah, that's, there's a lot of population there, there's a lot of stuff happening there, a lot of economic development happens there. But that doesn't mean that all the resources will be concentrated in that area. All it means is that what we want is for that whole area to strategically align the resources so that they're working together to make the most of what we have. So the answer is, over time, we want every aspect of state government to operate according to those regions or awfully close to those regions whenever possible.
Now, the community mental health region is a little bit different than the Regional Prosperity Initiative region. Any plans for that to change to align with the state's regions? Or
there have been some modifications that have made, and they match up pretty closely. Okay. But there are some differences. Okay. There are, in some cases, it'll take longer in order to conform everything together because we have current contracts and then current infrastructure that's out there. Sure. And so in some cases it made sense to deviate somewhat from the regional prosperity territories, but we think that over time that either the differences will become very minor, or hopefully we'll be able to conform them exactly at some point in the future.
Okay.
In the time we have left, I just wondered if you could share with viewers Lieutenant Governor Brian Calley's vision for the state of Michigan.
Michigan needs to be on top. That's our place. That's our heritage. It's where we come from. And when you look at how far we've come over the course of just the last few years, we know that the sky really is the limit. But the key is that we need to be all about our people. That we can't really be about government programs anymore. We have to say, what's the best possible future for our people, and then how can we help them to be as successful as they can. That's going to mean that our education system has to be closely aligned with what the demands of our economy are. It means that our health and human services has to go from maintaining people to helping them reach independence. It means that our talent and economic development area has to do more than just put people together with jobs or to incent companies to come in, but to create the best possible environment for success no matter what industry a person is in. So when you think about the type of job growth that we've seen over the course of the last few years, in the past, our comebacks have been all about automotive. We love automotive, but it's been less than a third of our job growth in the last 3.5 years, or the last 4 years, and that is a great sign for Michigan in the future. So we're pumped up about it, and we know we're on the right track.
Lieutenant Governor, thank you very much. We really appreciate you being on the show. Shannon?
Pleasure to be on the show.
And viewers, we plan to do this every month. We have several shows scheduled, so please tune in again and let us know how we're doing.